My father was lying in the hospital then, and if I say he was on the edge of death, it would not be wrong at all, because for an entire week he remained admitted, while all of us lived in fear and helplessness, counting every hour, praying through every night, watching the monitors, whispering God's name again and again, terrified that at any moment his breathing might stop. And although eventually he did recover and was brought back home alive, what happened afterward wounded me in ways I never imagined, because my sister-in-law, who had arrived that night when I was sitting on the floor, holding my father in my arms, suddenly accused me in front of everyone, saying that I was the one who had poisoned my own father, and those words struck me like knives, leaving me frozen where I sat, unable to even understand how such a thought could exist in her mind. And although my father did return home, his body was partially paralyzed, and he could not even move properly. And I begged and pleaded. I tried to explain. I cried openly like a broken child, but not a single person truly believed me. Strange and twisted stories were created about me, whispered in corners, exaggerated from mouth to mouth. And in the end, my own blood relatives refused to trust me. So I swallowed the humiliation, endured it quietly, and made the painful decision that I would no longer meet my family. And after being disgraced and mentally crushed there, I took my wife and children back to my own home and began a completely separate life where only my wife and my children existed and nobody else. Yet inside my heart, there remained a constant fear that perhaps even my wife doubted me a little, that maybe somewhere deep inside she believed that I had harmed my own father for inheritance or money. And because of that suspicion, she too slowly became distant from me, and gradually I myself began to pull away from her, spending my days in compromise, remaining silent only for the sake of my children, sacrificing my emotions for them, feeling as though my life had already ended while my body was still breathing. And then one day, a girl entered my world, a new employee at my office whose name was Kiara, a girl who was extraordinarily beautiful, and I met her for the first time in the cafeteria where she was sitting alone drinking coffee, and we were introduced formally. And she told me that she was alone in this world, that she had nobody, and I told her the same about myself, and perhaps that was my mistake, because for one brief moment it felt as though she had slipped quietly into my heart. There was something magical in her eyes, something that made you forget your pain for a second. And when office hours ended that evening, she asked me to come to her house, and at first I refused, but when she insisted again and again, I agreed, and after leaving the office, I lied to my wife, telling her that I had a night shift at work, even though such a thing did not exist. And my wife simply said okay and ended the conversation, as if it made no difference to her at all, which hurt me more than any argument ever could. And that night around 8 o'clock, or maybe close to it, I no longer remember clearly, I went to Kiara's house, knocked on the gate, and she opened the door herself, welcoming me warmly, wearing night clothes while I stood there in my formal office suit. And seeing her like that shocked me so deeply that I remained silent for several seconds, just staring at her in confusion and disbelief, until she asked me what had happened and where I had disappeared mentally. And without thinking, as if the words had escaped my mouth on their own, I told her that she looked unbelievably beautiful, and she became slightly confused, laughed softly, and said I should sit while she brought coffee for me, and she went to the kitchen, and after a while she returned and saw me still sitting in the same place and asked why I had not moved. And I replied that she herself had told me to sit there. And smiling gently, she said, "Not here. Go and wait for me in my bedroom." And at that moment my face turned red with strange happiness, my heart beating faster than it had in years. And I stood up and walked toward her bedroom and lay down on the bed calmly. Yet inside my chest, storms were raging, memories clashing with desire, loyalty wrestling with loneliness, guilt whispering in my ears while temptation pulled at my wounded soul. And as an old man today, when I look back at that moment, I understand that I was not searching for romance alone. I was searching for escape, for validation, for someone who would look at me without suspicion, someone who would not see me as a criminal, a failed son, or a broken husband, but simply as a man worthy of being admired. And lying there on that bed, I could feel how dangerously close I had come to betraying the life I had built. How fragile my morality had become after years of humiliation and emotional isolation. How silence at home had made my heart starve. How accusations from family had poisoned my sense of identity. And how easily another person's attention could start feeling like oxygen to a man who had been drowning for too long. And even though the night had only just begun, I already sensed that whatever path I was stepping onto was not an innocent one, that it carried the potential to either comfort my wounds or destroy what little remained of my dignity. And perhaps that is the cruelest truth of life, that sometimes people do not fall into temptation because they are evil, but because they are exhausted from being strong for too long, because they are tired of being misunderstood, because they crave to be seen, to be believed, to be touched emotionally. And that night in Kiara's house was the first time in many years that I realized how close I was to losing myself completely. The moment I lay down on the bed, sleep attacked me suddenly, as if exhaustion had been waiting quietly for its chance, and for a while I drifted away without even realizing it. And when my eyes finally opened again, I discovered that nearly an hour had passed, that I had been sleeping while the world around me continued without my awareness. And as I slowly lifted my head, I saw Kiara sitting in front of me, topless, wearing only her bra. And strangely, I was not shocked by the sight, not in the way a younger man might have been, but she was watching me with a softness that was unmistakably romantic. Her posture relaxed yet intentional, her gaze lingering. And when I asked her in a completely normal tone what time it was, she smiled and replied that it was only 2 o'clock and that we still had the whole night ahead of us. The way she said it filled with suggestion, clearly expecting that I would move toward her without hesitation. But inside me there was an emptiness where excitement should have been, my face calm, my heartbeat steady, my mind strangely distant, and I asked her why she had not woken me up earlier, to which she answered again in that same romantic manner, that if she had woken me, then perhaps I would not have allowed her to come so close to me. And confused, I asked what she meant, and what she had done with me while I was asleep. And her expression shifted, becoming serious as she questioned why I had even come there in the first place, asking whether it was only to break her heart, and I quickly replied that it was not like that at all, that I simply could not move so fast into everything, that maybe I needed a little time. And saying this, I stood up and told her that perhaps I should leave, and she responded by asking who would quench her thirst then. And I gave no answer because inside I was already drowning in guilt, feeling as though my conscience was tightening around my chest. And then she said that I was breaking her heart and wasting her time, and the way she said it carried so much emotion that for a moment I genuinely believed she had fallen in love with me. And to protect her feelings, I stepped closer to her, lifted my hand to her cheek, looked directly into her eyes, and told her that I too was very thirsty, but not tonight. That perhaps I needed to be mentally ready first. And she smiled at my words and said it was fine, that if I wanted to go, I could. But I should remember that she would not be able to sleep the whole night without me. And slowly her words began to weaken me, entering my body like electricity, making my skin tingle, stirring thoughts I had been forcing down for years. And then she relaxed her tone and said that if I did not want to touch her, it was fine, that I could simply come and sleep, because it was raining outside and I could take the other bed. And in that moment I told myself that much was possible, that simply staying the night without crossing any lines did not sound like betrayal, that rest did not equal surrender, that comfort did not have to turn into sin. Yet, as an old man remembering that moment now, I know how fragile such excuses are, because two young hearts under one roof, in one room, pretending to sleep separately, is not as simple as it sounds, especially when loneliness has hollowed a man from inside and attention feels like medicine. When a broken marriage has taught him silence instead of conversation. When accusations from family have eroded his confidence, when years of emotional starvation have made even gentle words feel intoxicating, and standing there between the door and the bed, rain tapping faintly against the windows. Kiara watching me with expectation masked as patience. I felt my willpower thinning, my logic arguing with desire, my loyalty to my wife and children fighting against the hunger to be wanted, to be chosen, to be looked at without suspicion. And I understood then that temptation does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers kindly, offers shelter, offers sleep, offers warmth on a rainy night, and slowly convinces you that staying is harmless, that tomorrow you will leave untouched, that tonight means nothing, and yet deep inside you know that every step closer is a decision. Every pause is a surrender in progress. And even though my body remained still, my thoughts were already crossing dangerous distances, proving that sometimes betrayal begins long before any physical act. It begins when a tired man allows himself to remain where he knows he should not, telling himself that two restless hearts can share one room and remain separate, even while knowing how rarely life allows such innocence to survive.